Hello, and welcome to Show Me History. I'm your host, Amy Blankenship. Did you know that St. Louis almost had its own Disney theme park? How did the idea for a St. Louis Disneyland come to be, and why didn't it pan out? This piece of forgotten St. Louis history resurfaced in 2015. 13 pages of the original blueprints featuring Walt Disney's Riverfront Square theme park appeared at an auction house in California. The daughter of a previous Disney employee found a plethora of Disney history in her garage after sorting through some of her father's belongings. The blueprints were thought to sell from $2,000 to $5,000. The winning bidder, a private collector, paid $27,000 for them. In the 1950s, St. Louis experienced an economic boom. With federal and local grant funds available, city authorities began a plan to create a greater metropolis. Focusing mainly on the old riverfront, the Civic Center Redevelopment Corporation pursued various projects to enhance the city. The riverfront had been in decay for decades, and most of it was deemed blighted. The goal was to revitalize the entire riverfront district by demolishing blocks of historic houses and buildings to make way for progress such as the Gateway Arch and the new Bush Memorial Stadium. Another was the proposal of a major shopping and dining district just north of the stadium. The square was to celebrate St. Louis history and culture while providing people a place to relax, shop, and dine downtown. The Globe Democrat said it was, quote, reviving the sparkle of the steamboat era. Downtown Square would feature sightseeing delights and facilities to eat at, drink, and be merry in a wide economic range, end quote. One city block would include shops, restaurants, an arcade, and theaters, along with a nod to St. Louis's Gilded Age. A French-themed restaurant was to be called Lafayette. A music and dance hall would boast the name The Maple Leaf with a nod to Scott Joplin and ragtime music. A bar, the Last Chance Saloon, would feature historic items of fur trappers and explorers. The Piece de la Resistance, the Gilded Cage Cinema. Plans for the cinema ranged from showing silent films in a normal theater building to a Circarama theater featuring a film on the history of St. Louis in a riverboat-shaped structure. Mayor Raymond Tucker contacted Walt Disney about creating a film on the history of St. Louis. Now, before you think this is a totally ludicrous and out-of-nowhere idea, Disney had produced 2 previous Circle Vision films about America, and one about Italy. And at the time, he was probably the most famous Missourian to call upon. So Mayor Tucker wanted an attraction to draw people to St. Louis. He envisioned working with Disney to create a film celebrating the city's upcoming bicentennial celebration. In March of 1963, city officials flew to Burbank, California to meet with Walt Disney. During the 2-hour meeting, St. Louis discussed their plans for the Riverfront Square shopping dining district. Disney wanted to improve the concept of the outdoor mall. He offered some design advice and said he would get back to the city on other matters, such as the film. His initial suggestions for the Riverfront Square were to enclose the entire structure to accommodate for St. Louis's fantastic weather. He also proposed a people-moving system from the Jefferson Memorial to the square, perhaps something similar to the monorail that would be used at Disney World. Disney set his economic friend on a project to do a cost analysis of an indoor mall in the Midwest featuring a Disney attraction. In May of 1963, Walt Disney and his wife visited St. Louis. Along with city officials, they toured the Riverfront District, Arch Grounds, Busch Stadium, and the Muni. Disney seemed enthusiastic, but made no show of his decision to help the Riverfront Square. While not fully committing to any project in St. Louis, ideas for a possible Midwestern Disneyland were stirring in Walt's mind. In June, he gave his team of Imagineers the green light to proceed with preliminary ideas for a theme park in St. Louis. They were to use the history of the city as a basis for ideas and design. The results of the initial cost analysis report were in. They proved useless in persuading the Disney Board of Directors to pursue the mall/entertainment district idea of Riverfront Square. Disney asked for a new report to be conducted, one that focused on the concept of an indoor theme park in St. Louis. Even though no official plan had been presented by either side yet, contracts were being written and edited by all parties. Problems between Walt Disney and August Busch began as soon as formal contracts for the project were presented to the city. Called Walt Disney's Riverfront Square, the theme park would not serve alcohol. Lawyers of the company say that Disney's name could not be used to sell alcohol in this venue. This was an issue for Mr. Busch. He basically called Walt Disney crazy for thinking that any business in St. Louis would be successful if it didn't sell beer. Not only did it exclude a major benefactor and prominent St. Louis family, it excluded a product that was part of the city. Anheuser-Busch employed thousands of residents and was part of the city's culture. A popular myth is that Busch and Disney got into a fight over the alcohol issue, and that was the main reason the plans were canceled. Although it was a concern, it was not the only contributing factor. Another problem was that August Busch had plans to build his own project on the riverfront. An Anheuser-Busch museum featuring historic displays of the company, showing Clydesdale horses, brewing demonstrations, and of course, selling beer. This was to be located right next to Walt Disney's Riverfront Square. Obviously, this would be a tricky situation. To confound matters more, the Civic Center Redevelopment Corporation declared that no project would be approved if it did not provide for the sale of wine, beer, or liquor. It would be the best interest of St. Louis to provide for these matters at any establishment. In December, Disney received the results of the newest cost analysis report. The indoor park could be expected a 5% return investment, with the initial cost for Disney Company being around $20 million. This study was based on the City of St. Louis providing the land at rock-bottom prices and building the shell for the park, surrounding infrastructure, and parking lot. The Disney Company would be responsible for all matters inside the park, rides, attractions, decor, etc. Still yet another problem was that a group of local citizens petitioned Walt Disney stating that his park and ideas degraded local history, turning history into income for the company. Disney addressed these problems by stating, quote, "Missouri and its history are important to me. There's a lot of opportunities to do things exciting about the state. The Mississippi River, Mark Twain, things both entertaining and educational. I am not interested in a tourist trap. I want something we in St. Louis can be proud of." End quote. All this tension, and the Walt Disney Company had not even given their formal presentation of the proposed theme park. That presentation took place on March 16, 1964, at the Belle East Motel in St. Louis. A series of meetings were held to discuss finances and designs. The park would be entirely indoors, allowing Disney to control lighting, temperature, and humidity. St. Louis has very hot and humid summers and can be rather snowy and cold in the winters. Climate control would allow for year-round visitors. Featuring 5 total stories, the top floor addressed Mr. Busch's beer concern. An observation floor atop the park would contain a banquet space, restaurants, and a cocktail lounge selling alcohol. This floor could be accessed via a park or a special elevator entrance bypassing the park. The main entrance would resemble that of a Disneyland Main Street USA. On the left, you'd find New Orleans, the old French Quarter. On the right, St. Louis at the turn of the century. Atmospheric lighting would reflect the time of day, and hidden speakers would project sounds of the city like horse hoofs on streets, talking, and music. The St. Louis section would feature a gaslight plaza with shops and restaurants. A theater would be at the far end showing local history. Escalators would move guests to the basement level and to the beginnings of St. Louis. Here, the Lewis and Clark Adventure would be housed. Chain cars would take guests from St. Louis through the plains, over the Rockies, and out to the Pacific Ocean. This floor would have a show featuring river pirates. Lastly, guests could visit the Circle Vision film experience, St. Louis Today. Guests traveling up to the mezzanine floor would encounter a ride attributing the Merrimack Caverns, perhaps a roller coaster. Also, there's an old haunted mansion here featuring Missouri ghost stories and lore. The New Orleans section resembled the old French Quarter. The first attraction would be the Blue Bayou Adventure, where guests would float through Louisiana wetlands encountering various types of wildlife. Other proposed attractions at the Riverfront Square were an opera house, a wishing well, a Davy Crockett-themed ride, Native American canoe ride, audio animatronic shows, and an aviary room. Now that the plans had been laid out, let's talk about finances. In April, members of both parties met again to discuss the financial interest. In general, it was agreed that St. Louis City would supply the building, the shell, and Disney would take care of the rest: rides, attractions, films, propping, decor. The total cost of the project was estimated to be $40 million. Things appeared to be going well until the spring of 1965. Disney believed that the city should and was going to provide the infrastructure. All they had to do was move in, get their attractions set up, and ready to open. In Disney's opinion, that meant creating walls, floors, electrical work, garages, parking lots, and land development. The city thought they should only provide the basic shell of a building, the foundation and outer walls. All interior improvements should be made by Disney. There was also some issues over control. By putting the Disney name in the park, Disney wanted complete control over the land. The Civic Center Leadership Corporation was not too keen on this concept. Disney could own the land and do as he pleased with the attractions, but the city would have a final say in all matters. A compromise or conclusion could not be met. In July of 1965, the city of St. Louis and the Walt Disney Company announced the official cancellation of the project. Disney said, quote, "We were asked to try to develop a major attraction having impact on the St. Louis area, a Disneyland. We suggested at the outset that the project of that scope and size and cost might prove difficult to accomplish due to a number of imponderable factors. Such has proven to be the case." End quote. And with that, the plans were canceled and pretty much forgotten. Beginning in May 1965, Disney began buying tracts of swampland in Florida. By the time the St. Louis deal had ended, he had already purchased 27,000 acres south of Orlando. Land had been cheap, unlike in the Midwest. The governor of Florida and the state legislature allowed for the creation of a self-governing zone, Reedy Creek Improvement District. Disney would have total control of the land, buildings, and tax rates for the area. This is currently being challenged in court, but in 1965, it was a good idea for Disney. In November of that year, plans were announced that the Disney Company would be building its second theme park in Florida. Many of the ideas developed for St. Louis would be reworked and used in this new park. Disney World, Pirates of the Caribbean, the Haunted Mansion, and Big Thunder Mountain all stem from ideas that were intended for St. Louis. In case you were wondering what happened to the proposed indoor mall, well, Mayor Cervantes formed a non-profit foundation to purchase the Spanish Pavilion from the New York's World Fair. They also purchased a replica of the Santa Maria, Christopher Columbus's famous ship. 4 years later, the building housing the pavilion was complete. With grandeur, the pavilion was presented to the city via a large parade. The popularity of the Spanish Pavilion was short-lived. A year after opening, the government-created nonprofit was forced to file for bankruptcy. The replica Santa Maria only survived 1 month, and it sunk during a thunderstorm. Thank you for joining me today. You can find me at our website at showmehistorystl.com or on Facebook at showmehistorystl. Until next time, I'll see you in the loo.